Hello guys, in this tutorial I thought I would go over some different angle techniques that I thought were relevant to creating a fight scene. Since I had this fight scene open and I've been going through just drafting a few poses here and there, kind of in my thumbnailing stage, and I thought it would be a good opportunity to go through how you can use different camera angles in action scenes and how they can help your scene or how they can make it worse. So anyway, let's get into it. So the first one that I am going to point out is the side-by-side one. So I've done a few shots here, just working out some things. It's basically where there'll be characters side by side. Here, if I draw in another pose here, the character will be somewhere here, and so it's kind of like a three-way thing where the two characters are here and the camera's here, and it's picking up both of them and they're side by side in relation to the camera. So this one is like the standard one, that it's almost like the default one that I go to, and there's a few reasons why. The first reason that I can think of is that it is the characters are clearly laid out in silhouette form. So if I were to black in a shape here, you would be able to recognize it almost instantly as being as the pose that I want you to communicate with it. So there's not going to be any mistranslation. Whereas if I did it from, say, a top-down point of view, you can see the head, right, and you can see the shoulders, but that as a shape is a lot less readable to a person. Say it's a nighttime scene and they're quite silhouetted against something, you might not be able to actually make out what that is. But in a side-by-side scene, you very rarely have that problem. So it's nice to quickly communicate things. If you want to just use it very quickly, the person's eye will be able to pick up what's happening almost instantly, and so that's the advantage, I guess. But you know, it's also nice to not rely on it too much. I tend to rely on it quite a lot, and so I'm trying to do some more fancy stuff with it where I can be a bit more inventive. But it's a very nice one to get yourself started. And also, if you're learning how to animate, generally this one is a good one for doing all your animation exercises in, because that way you have less to think about, because it's easier to draw them from this angle. You can think about the physics and stuff, and you don't have to take into consideration things like perspective as much. That's some of the reasons I can think of. Generally, I guess you're in the frame, it would be more like this. So you'd have more of the figures in the frame, and perhaps, I don't know, maybe the horizon line would be around about here. So it would not be in dead center, because that's kind of not what you should do in cinematography. They always advise you against that, because it just doesn't look nice as a composition. Instead, have it like either below the center, or you can have it looking slightly downwards. And if you were looking down on them, the horizon line would be up in the top half of the frame. So that's the obvious one. Now, there's another one that I quite like, which is also on the same kind of height level, but it's this one. And so this is a bit different. I know I'm in the early stages, so it looks like crap right now, but so this one is slightly different. So this is where you have one person that's closer to you and another person that's further away, and I quite like this effect actually. It's kind of hard to describe what is nice about this effect, but I guess some of the moves can look very different from this angle, as opposed to being from a side angle where everything's laid out a bit plain and simple and everything looks kind of how it's meant to be. But then here you can get a completely different effect, and it kind of obscures the what's actually happening in the frame. In addition to that, you can it can also make it seem a little bit more like you're a character within the shot, instead of being, this is like a like you're not part of the shot, you're in the camera's view, and you don't feel like you're there with the action. Here in this shot, you do feel a little bit more like you're spectating, like you're watching the action. On top of that, you could do things like to build power in the scene, or to build intensity, more intensity in the scene. You could put it on a Dutch tilt as well, so you could have one of them like that. So that would convey that this person has the upper hand over this person because they're higher in the frame. If you put it off center a little bit like that, it gives it like a handheld effect, like you've got a handheld camera, and it's a little bit more chaotic. Although, depending on what setting they're in, they could be training fighting, so they could be training with each other, and this could be just like an everyday thing for them. So if they're doing this in a training hall, right, where they do this every day for practice, then it's not going to have that intensity that an actual fight would have. So in that case, you might want to do something more like this, where you would, you'd have them kind of, I don't know, a nice composition like here. So you're looking from a bit of a distance, and it's a lot more calm because you've got the horizontal line in there, and you might have a few more horizontal lines here. Say that's a stadium of some sorts. You see how that's a lot more calm in the frame, and everything's level, it's horizontal, and there's but your eye is still led to these two because they're the vertical figures in there. But this gives you more of an idea that the two of them do this a lot, and it's no big deal. So that's more to do with placement in the frame rather than the angles of the camera itself, but still you might find that useful. So then there's things like the close-up. So this is used in anime a lot, as you might know. This is just something I've sketched out very, very quickly, so I'm sorry that it looks kind of terrible right now. It's just part of my thumbnailing process. I like to work with I just like to scribble something down and then build it up from there, do more passes on it and refine it a little bit, add to the energy as time goes on. But something like this it's used in anime a lot. Like you'll have noticed this if you watch anime. You'll go into something like this, a close-up shot with someone's head, when you want to know what they're thinking. So it's about going into their heads and exploring what are they thinking in that moment. Instead of what they're doing with their body, it's less about their body because their body's cut off from the frame. You're not thinking about their body, you're inside their mind. So they might be rethinking their strategy. Maybe their first attempt at knocking the person out didn't go so well. So instead, they've just kind of distanced themselves a little bit and they're rethinking their strategy. So a shot like this is very good for that. Maybe you'd couple that with like another shot of the opponent on this side, and that way you have this 180-degree rule where you're not breaking the line of action, and yeah. So then they both get their chance to think what they're thinking, and you don't have to go full anime in it and give them an inner voice monologue. You could literally just convey it in the eyes. So here there's kind of an intensity in the eyes, maybe a desperation. But if I did this, what would that say? That would say remorse, I don't want to fight you, or something like that. So you can convey that with an expression. You don't need to spell it out for your audience. They're not idiots most of the time. Okay, so moving on, we can have also the downward shot. So looking down, almost like a bird's eye view. You could have it like a full-on bird's eye view where you're literally just an eye in the sky looking down at these two figures like this, right? Well, maybe they'd be in like stances or something, be doing try and do it better than this, I guess, is another thing. You might want to have it, just a little bit to the side, so bring the bodies like here, so you can just see their feet, and it makes them a little bit more readable, and it also creates this, it creates more depth, So if I had it like the head is there, the shoulders there, you can't see the feet, that's like a bit two-dimensional. But then if you just edge it downwards just a little bit, and you see their feet just poking out there, gives it the depth because the heads are kind of coming at you in comparison to the feet. It's giving this perspective where it's just going like, you know, like outwards from this point, like a bit of 1 point perspective, I guess. So yeah, the proportions are terrible, I'm sorry. And be more like, you know, something like that, and you'd center it a lot better than this. You might want to, let's see, rotate it like that or something. That's a bit like the Dutch tilt again. It's kind of going diagonal. If you learn about composition, you'll learn that basically this. I'll just go through this real quick. So vertical lines like this indicate certain things. It can indicate power. It can indicate, you know, up and down. But generally, it's a bit like kind of alarming, I guess. Horizontal is often used in action. So horizontal lines going across, any kind of horizontal lines used in perspective or anything like that can show a lot of like movement. Like things are moving around, things are happening. Now, horizontal lines moving across like this, maybe something like this, just indicate with a few lines, you know, represented within nature. These are things found in nature. That's how they came about. So something like this is, you know, maybe you have just a little bump here, but that is calm, tranquil, still, not moving. You know, you ever look out on a lake on a clear day with no wind or anything, it's just flat, you know, and we're programmed to recognize that as being calm and peaceful. But something like this, you know, you make the dynamic, you know, horizontal like this. It indicates that maybe this guy is pushing forwards, pushing this guy back. You know, we could have him thrusting him backwards with a flurry of punches. I don't know. Just improvising here. Okay, so then there's this one, which is quite a cool one. So you could have like I guess what they call a worm eye view. So that's when you have like, I'll try and draw something out very quickly. But basically, it's smaller as you go up the body. So maybe, and you can really force this. So you don't have to do it accurately. In fact, the beauty of 2D animation is that you can push it to its extreme, and it kind of is rewarding to do that. It feels, the whole thing will feel a lot more energetic and full of life if you do that. So here, you see the feet could actually be bigger. I can push the feet to be bigger. This foot would be much bigger, like this. Something like that. Actually, the knee would be higher. You know. I've got not using reference for this, so it's a bit tricky, but maybe this guy's in the air like this, and he's just missed a kick, so he's going round like that, something like that. You know, just to thumbnail it down like this, use simple shapes, you know, simple shape language. So how can you represent a foot with a shape? Well, I use a triangle, or, you know, something like that. That's how I do it. But you'll pick up your own way of using shape language. And then you can, you know, refine that later. You can go and shoot your own reference for it, film your own reference, you doing the kick, and then study what it actually looks like in these poses and stuff like that. Or look online for where someone demonstrates that kick and observe it and see how it looks and stuff like that. But you can, for now, You can just get down the idea like this. So anyway, let's frame that a little bit better. Maybe like this. And okay, so if it's big in the frame like this and they're taking up a lot of room in the frame, that adds a bit of tension, I guess. Yeah, it adds tension because you haven't got anywhere to look except there, and also it's like things that are like big in the frame, because of where the camera is, they'll be moving very fast as well. I forgot to mention that in these ones, the sideways ones, when you will do a punch or a kick or something, one of the reasons that action cinematographers will often frame things from the side, including in live action, is because punches and kicks look more powerful from this angle. Because basically, from a side angle, when you throw out your fist like that, it will have a longer distance to move in relation to like the frame, right? Whereas if you did it face on like this, you see that kick, it's not actually it's not extruding out very far from his body, you see? So it does make a bit of a difference in that it's this one, your punches will seem to be faster and more powerful than when they're shot with this point of view, because they're just there's more movement within the frame. Anyway, so also with this point of view, I don't know, I don't use this one very often, but you can also think about like what you can see in the frame here, and what you see in the frame here, besides the characters. So here, you're only seeing the characters and the ground, so you're looking down at the ground. In here, or unless they're, you know, on a gangplank like this, and then there's an abyss below them, I don't know, you might want to do that. But here, you're looking up at the sky, you got the cloudy sky or whatever. You know, what do you want your palette to look like? Do you want it to be, do you want the places to be full of sky? Generally, the ones with lots of sky tend to look a little bit more photogenic, because staring at the ground, it's not very visually appealing, whereas looking up, it is very visually appealing. You can see the sky, you know. The sky is it's just one of those things that look nice. It almost always looks nice, even on a bad day. So if you want your picture to look nice, you might want to put a lot of the shots, you know, with the horizon line down at the bottom here. If you don't want that, you might want it to have a different feel. Maybe they're in these they're in these fight pits, right? These back alley fight clubs, and you just see the dirty ground, and maybe you see the bystanders in here, and they're kind of forming a ring around these two fighters, right? So that would have a whole different effect. That would feel like he's trapped and he's kind of fighting his way out. Maybe he's in prison or something, and you would reflect that because he's just got ground around him. There's no sky, there's no optimism there. Maybe that's what he's fighting for. He's fighting to get out, and then when he's closer to his goal of being freed, I don't know, I'm just making this up, but then you might start to bring in shots of the sky because it's more optimistic. It's like, you know, he's more free. You got to kind of think about like what you want to show in the piece according to the characters or the story, and then how you can just convey that in all the shots you do. Okay, you've reached the end of part 1, and I've recorded 2 parts to this. The next part is going to go into more about your directing, your timing. If you want to see that, I've already put it up on my website. You can go over there and watch it for free. If you want to watch it, just click the link on the screen, or there's also a link in the description if you're on a mobile device. It will also be up next week, so if you don't want to go to the website, that's fine. It will be up in about a week or so. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned some stuff from it, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.